I work for Contentserv, and let's actually start with one legal slide in a way. First, so you see our logo, and just to make sure that some of the information we are showing here does not represent actual Contentserv customers. These are just examples to really fit the narrative of today. Let me actually start with a brief recap. A couple of weeks ago, there was another lightning demo done by PIM vendors that focused on the fashion industry. And if you talk about fashion products, they are relatively simple products usually. Take, for example, this t-shirt here that already has a bunch of product data like a color, a fit, a size, and some ERP information such as an item number and a price. But even a super simple t-shirt is a lot more complicated than it seems at first sight, because you can understand them as a product that may come in different color variants and also then in differently sized SKUs, which increases the number of total SKUs dramatically. And if we look at a lot of different brands from the fashion industry or retailers and at all their product groups, you'll realize that, and this is just two examples of two product groups here, they have a whole lot of products. So this is just from women and men's clothing. And these are not the variants or SKUs, these are just the products. So if you just multiply this by 2-3 different colors each and 5-6 different sizes, then you'll have a huge amount of SKUs in the end. With manufacturing, it's not exactly like that. It works in pretty much different ways. Take, for example, this technical manufacturer here who configures and builds engines and drive systems. They have a limited amount of products that then create SKUs and different variants through customer configuration. Really complicated topic because you really have interconnection of different components that finally create the SKUs or the items that people can buy. Or one example that most of you will be familiar with, take Tesla, for example. Basically, they only have 4 core products, the Model S, 3, X, and Y. But by going through the different model years, by going through the different engines that are available, battery packs, colors, and tires, and all the other options you have to customize these, you'll still end up with more than 10,000 SKUs in the end. And that's really the different approach here, that it's a lot more complicated when we talk about data modeling. And since we talk about manufacturing today, there's a lot of things we won't talk about today. That is me. I am Lars Beduhn, and I'm going to talk to you about manufacturing and 3 advanced techniques to deal with complex products. And as I said, a lot of the things we cannot talk about because we don't have time for this. But just to give you a brief overview of what Contentserv is and what we do, for example, we won't talk about our configurable and user-specific dashboards that are part of the software. We also won't talk about our fully integrated DAM system that allows you to really manage, organize, and tag all your media, create image derivatives on the fly, including watermarks, connect to content delivery networks, the Adobe Cloud, to YouTube, even to Microsoft Office if you want to do that. We won't go over our graphical workflow editor that allows you to create and manage workflows using just drag and drop and various different action components for sending emails, creating notifications, etc. We also won't talk about our fully integrated search portal that uses a Google-like interface to allow different kinds of people to search for products using full text search, using faceted search, and getting rich data previews of all their products or media with various different download options. That's also then fully integrated. We also don't have the time to highlight the user configurable logins so that every user gets their own login where they see and have only that at their disposal, what they actually need for their daily work. So in that sense, it's really highly customizable, and you can set it up so that every user of Contentserv, be it internal or external user, sees exactly what they need to see and work with. Or our new supplier onboarding module that's going to be released early next year that allows external suppliers to upload their data to the system verify it, modify it, receive data quality overviews, and all of that before the data even reaches Contentserv as something like a self-service portal. That is the main idea behind that module. And by the way, and that's the best of it, all of that comes standard. That's integrated in Contentserv. So everything we're going to see today is there as well, but all of these things that we don't have time to really go over are included as well with every installation. But let's get started. The first topic I want to talk about today are component-based products. In this case, an easy-to-use example that everyone can easily understand is bikes, because bikes, everyone probably has a bike, but they also consist of different components. You can see them as a product that you just buy if you don't care about this, but from a manufacturing perspective, they consist of many different parts, and that's what I want to talk about first. So let's switch to Contentserv here, and let's look at our system. In this case, we look at the manufacturer Cube, who has a range of different bikes that he organizes in different categories, such as mountain bikes, road bikes, etc. And we have something like a bike product, similar to what I showed on the slides earlier with the fashion industry with a t-shirt product. So this is nothing you can actually buy. All the way down then to one color variant and differently sized SKUs, because this bike is available with different frame sizes. If we open up one of these SKUs, we find all the information that is stored on this SKU, such as the main image, the brand logo. We have something like the different colors as we call them when we want to resell them, such as blue and gray, or also using the manufacturer's name, in this case, carbon and blue. We have some information like the frame size, the weight, and a bunch of other things, such as the components, which I talk about in a moment, or even something like a 360-degree image that spins by itself or that I can control, that we can then push also to our CMS systems, web shops, or wherever you want to use them. But obviously, and that's the beauty of using a PIM, we don't want to manage all of the data just on the SKU level, because then we end up with managing redundant data. We want to make sure that this doesn't happen. So instead, we can leverage the hierarchical data model and store overarching information on higher levels, such in this case, and this, again, it's just a product. You cannot buy the elite race bike because you haven't picked a color and not a frame size. But still, a lot of the information is still true for all the color variants and all the different sizes, such as, in this case, a list of components. And we'll find here basically references to other objects in our system, such as the frame that's being used. And here we selected to display the weight of this particular part and the price, and also then for all of the other components that we have here. And we can take the information that's stored on these other products and not just display them here, but also work with them dynamically. And here it's really easy to understand because we just take all of the different components and add up all this information to a total weight, in this case, 16.5 pounds, and also a total bill of materials for all the components. So what basically we have to pay in order to configure it, which is in this case $3,550.83, just as one example. That is also highly dynamic because we may not only work in English-speaking countries. So let's go ahead and switch language, for example, to German. And we'll see two interesting things here. Of course, most of the content exists also in German already. And the weights are now automatically displayed in kilograms all the way down to the total weight that we have here that now reads 7.5 kilograms that we have here. But let's switch back to English, where our main content is, and also that fits better with this audience. What we can do here now is when we see all these components, these are really individual objects that we may also sell separately. Take, for example, this fork here. I can simply click on it and click on details, and it will open it up in another window where I find all the rich information that is stored on this particular product, such as also a main image, an automatically generated barcode based on the EAN or GTIN number, and also the things we elected to display, a weight, and the price that we use here as the basis for our calculations. But let's go ahead and actually make a little change here. And while I do this, note the number that right now we're at 16.5 pounds and $3,550. So I switch to edit mode, and it basically still looks more or less the same, just that I can actually make changes to all the entries here, because this bike by default doesn't include any pedals. Well, let's switch this up. I just click on replace, and it automatically knows, okay, you're probably looking for pedals, so it auto filters the options I can pick from. And well, we're kind of like a shop that cheaps out a little bit, so we only have no pedals, or in this case, since this is a Cube bike, we only offer the Cube aluminum mountain bike pedals. Let's just select this, and we'll see here it automatically displays its image, the weight, and also the price. So these cost basically $20 and weigh almost 1 pound. Let's save this and go back to the calculated values, and we'll see here that these have been updated, and now it reads 17.5 pounds and $3,570 that we have here. So we can really use the information that's stored on all the components that we're using to calculate new values with this. And the sky's the limit here of what you want to do, because if you talk about really complicated technical products, there might be a lot more information going on where you have different wattages and other technical values that you have to calculate with. And that is just an easy example of what you can do here. Something similar you can do with non-product related content. In the case of mountain bikes, there's something that's called a bike classification. And in this case, this bike is classified as a category 3 bike cross-country. And this classification includes this image and also this text. So let's go ahead and do 2 changes here to the data. Number one, first we go ahead and we just remove this, and I just say I want to remove the bike classification. Let's save this. And what happens is we see here now that it automatically updated this. Of course, there's no image, but it also tells me that there's no bike classification selected. Let's go ahead and add something else back in and say, actually, this is not category 3. Maybe this is a category 4 bike. Again, I click here. The selection is already filtered to all the relevant information, and I say this is actually an all mountain bike. I select this, save the changes, and we see now that category 4 is actually selected. It also changed the information here. I have the new image, and also from this information module, so in this case, it's not another product, but just a reusable object. It pulls the information and displays it side by side as if it were written right on the product. That's just another example of how you can manage these things. One final example I have of these components and non-product related reusable content. And for this, I'll actually go to a fashion-oriented product. I click into a different section here where I actually have some products. We'll see it's a kind of similar structure where we have some clothing going on and a baby t-shirt in this example, but also some text modules of reusable content, in this case, washing and drying instructions. Because what we can do, let's open up this t-shirt, is that in this case, similar data model, similar structure here, but other attributes such as a sleeve size, length, and a neckline, things we won't find on a bike. If I scroll down here, we'll also find laundry instructions, and these are technically just linked here. But here's the interesting thing, that we can further enrich these connections between 2 objects. And we can see this if I switch to edit mode. And if I go here to the machine wash at 60 degrees Celsius for cotton. If I click on this, let's click on the plus icon here and select this. Then we can see this, that here we didn't just take the information module machine wash, but we also added some additional information that for this particular product, we have to wash it with similar colors and wash it inside out. Another really popular example is if you have something like a flashlight and you need AA batteries. Well, you can link the batteries to the flashlight, but how many will you need? Then you could, for example, here just add the number that flashlight A needs 2 AA batteries, flashlight 2 needs 4 of them, to really enrich the connection between 2 separate objects or products in this case. And with that, let's go back to the slides here and let's talk about number 2. And the thing number 2 I want to show you, variable data points. Because when you are manufacturing complex products, you might be faced with really complex data, such as this here. To stay with a narrative of bicycles, they also nowadays come with engines or motors. And these have various different technical aspects, such as a power graph or something like the torque in relation to the cadence or the speed. So how would this work? Because what we've seen so far is that we basically have something like individual attributes, which might not help us because we have all these different data points here going on. For this, let's jump back to the bikes, where we find not just all the different manufacturers that we have here in the system, for example, but also where we find all of our different components that I've just shown you. So for example, here, all the forks that we have, the frames, the handlebars, and all the other things, all the way down, in this case, to our bike motors. And let's look at one here in particular, the Bosch performance line. Here we have some data concerning the torque. And we have something we call a, well, not just we call it, but it's basically a table of variable data points. So what I can do here is just add any number of attributes to the table and any number of values, the same way you can do this in Microsoft Excel, for example. So in this case, we find something here like the cadence at 30 revolutions per minute. We have a torque of 75 nanometers. At 35, it's also 75. And then it slowly starts dropping. We have like 68 Newton meters at 85 RPM, so on and so forth. And we can take this data and to automatically draw a graph here to represent that data. But let's actually go ahead and make a slight change here and go ahead, and I just want to add another row to this because this here stopped actually at 110 RPM. Let's click on the plus icon and I can simply add something else like 115. And in this case, let's say we only have 40 Newton meters of torque left in this case. Can also just switch to the next one and say, okay, we also have 120, and there we only have something like 20 Newton meters. The values are not actually correct now, so if you know someone working at Bosch, then just ignore this, that the values are kind of off here, but just for demonstration purposes. I save this and I save all of these changes, and we see how it's immediately reflected in this diagram that's drawn here. It added the 115 RPM, the 120 RPM with the respective torque values in Newton meters, and we saw here that it drops automatically. So you don't have to create these graphics and graphs by hand, but you can also just do this right from within Contentserv and use these graphics in all your other systems or publications. Which brings me to the last thing I wanted to talk about, and that is online configurators. Because a lot of times when you have complex products, you will find something on the website or the shop that allows you to really configure or customize these products. And we want to provide the data to these end user front ends to allow them to do that. But where does the data actually come from? Well, I can show you. In this case, let's go back to the bikes here and let's collapse all of these things and let's go to the bike configurator. I created one already, but let's just go ahead and create a new configuration here. I just click on new child. I could give it a name, but let's skip over this for a moment. And I simply open this up and it automatically sets, okay, the configuration ID in this case uses my number, the date, my name, and also the date and time. Well, the first thing I have to decide is what kind of bike do I actually want? A mountain bike, a road bike, city bike, kids bike? Well, I like mountain bike, so let's select this. Coming from this, it automatically knows, okay, maybe I want to pick a different suspension because with a kids bike, you wouldn't have that. But with a mountain bike, you can actually pick whether you want a no suspension, hardtail, or a full suspension bike. So let's say no suspension in this case. And now I can further pick all the other relevant parts here. So let's say I pick a fork. I like this Salsa Firestarter fork. I want a specific frame manufactured by Santa Cruz. I select the brake system and the tires that I want to use. In this case, I like the Schwalbe Rapid Rob Active. But now I just realized maybe it's not such a good idea if I want to really go and use it as a mountain bike. No suspension might not be such a good idea. So let's actually go back and make a change here. And let's say I want a full suspension bike. Well, it automatically updates this and it clears out the fork and the frame, because guess what? If I have no suspension, well, the full suspension bike has actually a fork that offers suspension. So the list here is automatically filtered according to that configuration. So I can now pick a fork that actually offers suspension rather than one without it, as I've seen before. So let's actually take the RockShox SID Ultimate Race Day. And the same is for the frame, where now the frame that I picked earlier wouldn't work because part of the frame is our rear suspension. So in this case, I have another option right here. I'll stay with Center Cruise, but I pick a different version. And I have these options here. Really important. This is, of course, not the user backend, but this is what we can use to set up this information to then provide it to the online configurators and just show how it would work right from within Contentserv with like distributed data models and also with some logical decisions, as we've seen here, that depending on what I pick, full suspension or no suspension, I get different options concerning all the other components and parts. And with this, I've actually reached the conclusion. That's all I wanted to talk with you about today. I'll thank you for your time and attention today, and I'll see you around in the Q&A session. That's it for me. Thanks a lot, and take care. Bye-bye.